Hey everyone, welcome back to On the Grid. And in today's video, what I wanted to do was take a look at Fanalab, which is a really great tool that enables you to customize and personalize your Fanatec gear. What I thought I would do is just do a really simple guide on how to navigate Fanalab. I've had, a few people ask me certain questions about, just getting it set up, getting it going. What do we need to do? What are the best settings and what are the best options for it? And so I figured I would just do a quick video on just walking through the interface, especially the most recent version, which is 153, as you can see in the top left. Probably above all, what I love about Fanalab is the fact that I can create endless settings for my wheel. Now, if you're coming from any Fanatec gear, on your wheel, you have basically 5 settings that you could customize. And so with those 5 settings that you can customize, you're really limited to that. And if you want to swap anything, you would need to make adjustments on the fly within those. Fanalab enables you to have endless. You can create all the custom settings you want per car, as you'll see once we get to the game profile and I show you that. So really what Fanalab does gives you the opportunity to really customize all the LEDs that are on your wheel, vibration, add additional dynamic force feedback, which is great, having the ITM feature if you have a DD wheel. What I'll do is I'll just go through and do a basic guide, but if you feel like you need to have something a little bit more in depth and want to go into customizing out the Rev LEDs and all those things, please let me know and I'd be happy to do that. What's really important after you have Fanalab installed is you make sure you have the driver installed at the same time. And sometimes, you'll think that this could be the driver and everything in one, which one day would be great to have that. But for now, you have to have the latest driver package and the latest Fanalab installed. So this is 1.53. So you'd have to make sure you're installing 381, which is the latest driver package, and all the firmware is included with it to make sure you get the right functionality out of everything. In Fanalab, every menu pretty much has hints, so it tells you everything you're going to do. So some people are more visual learners rather than having to go through and read and read a manual or read all the hints and figure everything out. So that's why I'm doing this video. Now, first thing, menu. You obviously can see there's no game running here now, and previously this was the launch dashboard. So now it's been updated to have all the different links. So, go to the forum, Fanalab, direct link to where to download it, the Fanatec blog, the shop, support, all, the social media channels, everything is there in one place, and it's just a simple click to get to all those. And I think that's a nice addition to have in there. On the bottom here, you see all the active devices. On the right, obviously, are all the games. Currently, I'm showing the games that I have installed or that I'm running, and I have the other ones hidden. So if you want to see all the games, you would simply just select this, and now we see all the games, even games that I'm not using. So previous games, Automobilista, Dirt Rally, and so on. And basically what I just do is I just go through and hide these, the ones that I'm not playing anymore. So you can just click the little eye icon here to hide those. And anytime you want them back, you can always just select it. So we'll just go through. I'll get rid of these here. And there we go. So anything you see above this white line here, these are all favorites. So I've favorited all these games here so that they're all shown in order at the top of the list. Now, one thing here with your active devices is that you can go through, like say for example, the Clubsport pedals here, it'll automatically detect those, but you can go in and change them here by clicking this and showing, which pedal you want to actually show. So if I do have, the Clubsport inverted, I can go switch to that. Or if I have the load cell pedals, I can switch to that. As far as for your wheel, you basically have your DD base. It'll show the DD2 if you have a DD2, and your Podium button module endurance. So that's pretty straightforward. When you look at this menu here, you see launch game via Steam here, the Steam icon. You can go in and have the game launch rather than having to open Steam. You can launch it directly via the executable. So that you have to navigate to where your game is, where in the game folders, and select the game there to launch it directly. I just like to launch it with Steam because for most purposes, I'm going to be in Steam anyway. So I'm going to be navigating the store, or I'm going to be looking at my friends list or chatting or anything like that. So I just rather have it open with Steam. Now, if we go over to the tuning menu, this tuning menu is exactly the same tuning menu that you have in your driver window. So whether you're making adjustments there or here, it's the same thing. I just enjoy it here because it's much bigger, it's a better visual. So, and this will adjust based on the type of wheel you have. So because I have a DD wheel, I have different features there, like the interpolation, the inertia, and so on. Because I have my button module endurance on there, I have the advanced paddle module on as well. So I have different settings there. So it'll, adjust based on the wheel or the hub that you actually have running. All right. right, so if we go over to the dynamic force feedback. Now, dynamic force feedback is really great because this allows you to really customize that dynamic force feedback in game. So one thing is really important is you're going to use one or the other. Don't want to be running both of them at the same time. It would be contradictory. So if, for example, you're in Assetto Corsa Competizione or ACC, and you're using the dynamic damper in game, then make sure this is off. If you're using the dynamic damper in here, then make sure it's off in the game. So don't run both of them at the same time. What I like about the dynamic damping in Fanalab is that I can actually customize it to exactly the threshold of the minimal speed, the maximum speed, the range, and the strength that I want to have that take effect. So versus what is in game and what is here, this allows you to personalize it a lot more. And obviously you have the reverse dynamic damping. Now in some games like Automobilista 2, it has a dynamic damping that is adjustable per cars, and basically it auto detects and it does it itself. So I prefer to use Automobilista 2 dynamic damping in the game, which is a new setting that was just added, I think probably 2 updates ago. And so I run that and I turn this off in Fanalab. All right, so we move on from this, we go into the vibration menu. In the vibration menu, this will depend on the steering wheel that you're using, obviously the pedals as well. But as you can see here, I have the Podium button module Endurance, which doesn't have vibration motor, so it's not supported. It's not going to show up. If I go and swap out, which I'll do in a second, I'll go back to the main menu, I'll swap out for my Formula V2 and you'll see the changes that happen there. With my V3 pedals, when you go in through here, this is for the brake, and then this is for your throttle. So in here you can adjust things like your ABS vibration, your suspension travel, which I'd say 99% of the time I keep it off because I don't want to have vibration constantly, because this is based on road bumps and curbs. So I don't want to have that vibration in the wheel or my pedals going constantly based on if I'm hitting a bump or something. I know I like to have the wheel base, give me that information. So you can personalize this how you want. You can try it out, add this the travel vibration, the wheel lock vibration. I leave this on because I like to have that little bit of information if I am locking up. You can also do it for the understeer or oversteer. So this is pretty much everything to do with the brake and what you're telling it to tell you. So that'll be for the brake, and then obviously for the accelerator it'll be the same thing. So you have your rev limiter, which I usually have it on, and I have it quite high at 98%, so it's just at the edge of my vibration limiter. Again, suspension travel I have it off, wheel spin I have it on, understeer and oversteer I have that off. And that is not the same for every game. Some games where I find I want a little bit more information, I'll do so, and some games where I don't want information, if I find it I'm just getting too much, I'll turn that off. And that's the beauty of this, is that you can customize it how you want. So before I go on, let's go back to the main menu, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap out my Porsche Podium wheel for my Formula V2 wheel, and I'll just show you what will happen there. Now, if we see, I have here the Clubsport Formula V2 wheel, which detects automatically as soon as you put it on. But you'll see I have another arrow here, and that's because if I want to go in here, I could select whatever the Formula wheels, including the Formula Wheel 2020, that I wanted to show. So if I plug the Formula V2 wheel, or if I plug my Clubsport Formula 1 2020, it doesn't recognize. I can go in here and swap that out. If I go back to the vibration menu, you can see automatically my Formula V2 wheel showed up here. These are all the same, but my Formula V2 wheel now has a lot of control on what information I can get to trigger the vibration. If we look here, you have ABS. This engine vibration is basically anytime you're revving the engine or anytime you're accelerating, it's going to increase by the RPM, whereas this is based on the rev limiter, so once you're hitting the edge of the throttle. Now you have suspension travel vibration, traction control, wheel lock, wheel spin, understeer, and oversteer. One thing I would suggest is do not go overboard with this. Do not have everything pumped up. Just keep in mind that you never really want to overdo anything. You want to have it just enough where it's telling you what's going on, but you're not having your steering wheel constantly vibrating. So let's move on from this. We'll go into the LEDs. Now, this is where you can really start to have a lot of fun, and you can spend hours and go down the rabbit hole of constantly making adjustments to it. So in this menu, basically you have it set up in 3. You have your display here, what's showing on your OLED display on your wheel. You have your rev LEDs. So those are on the Formula V2 wheel, which will be these rev LEDs here. Okay. And then we have our flag LEDs, and the flag LEDs are what we see here. So these are your flags on each side. Let's talk about the display first. So the C here is showing what's constantly displayed. So obviously I have my speed constantly displayed because I want to see that. So that'll be there. You can only have one of these running at a time. So say for example, I go, well, I want my RPM to be showing constantly. It's going to only default to that, and the other won't be shut off. So you can only have one running at a time. these 1 to 3 and X are priorities. So my first priority, I obviously want my gear changes. So when I'm switching the gear, that's going to show up automatically. And these are all turned off. So again, this is not running any of my profiles. This is just as soon as I put the wheel on, it's going to show me this default setting. If you want to, show when you're losing traction control or, you're slipping, so you can put this on and that will be second priority. So anytime you switch gear, the gear is going to come up first. And then if you're losing traction control, say for example, at the same time, this traction control will kick in after. So that will be second priority. Most of these I have them off because I just like to see constantly having maybe the speed or maybe my gear changes, or if you want to see which lap you're on, that'll tell you as soon as you go through the line. So the Rev LEDs can be enabled to show. So these are your pit lane as well as when the pit limiter is enabled. This will be. I tend to pretty much run in blue, which is a pretty standard color. I mean, you can obviously change it any way you want. And to do so, you just click and hold, and you have your color wheel that you can go through and select all different things for it. Now, if you say, for example, I don't want any colors, and you're like, how do I shut it off? You just basically turn it black, which ends up having no lights. This is where I was saying earlier, you can go down this rabbit hole. You can kind of end up just playing with this thing for hours, and especially when you're trying to dial in a very specific car like a McLaren or a Porsche, and you want the Rev LEDs to match exactly. So one, you can change the lights to match what the car is in a Porsche. If it's, if it's green to blue to red or blue to white to red, or whatever it may be, you can go through here and adjust these colors first based on what you're seeing in the car. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll be in the car, just sitting on the side of the track and revving the engine, swapping back and forth between, Fanalab and the game, and then just matching the colors to which colors are showing in the car. So if there's 4 yellow or 4 red, then I'll put these 4 yellow. And then from there, I start to work on my percentages. Usually what I do is I'll dial them down quite about half, and then I'll just look at the rev limiter in game versus my wheel, and I'll adjust it till I get it right. The flash, usually you want this at right at the top, so that once you hit that limit, you're getting the flash. And now for your flag LEDs, you can obviously turn a lot of these things off if you want, but you can have your flag LEDs flash when your wheel locks up, when you have the ABS on, traction control, your DRS is on and off. Again, race room, for example, I have this switched to, I think it's green. I'll have to load one up, but I'll have this to green, so it lets me know that I can hit my my DRS, sorry, not ABS, and then it'll go to blue or it'll go to white or whatever when the DRS is actually active. So rather than having to look at your your HUD or your dash or anything like that to see if your DRS is allowed at that point, so we can just show you these are all on now, which means everything is going to be flashing for all of these items. So which I think is a bit overkill. So you might want to just turn that off. So this is really where you customize what you're seeing as far as information on your OLED and your LEDs. So the display, the rev, and the flag LEDs. If we go over to ITM is really what I think brings Fanalab alive, and especially if you have a DD base. Now on the Podium button module endurance, I'll switch it out and I'll show you. I'll end up having 2 different options, but right now this is showing me what I can trigger on my DD wheel. As far as analysis screen, I can set it to be a default, and I'll always have it to be just on the logo screen, the system info, the force feedback info, the motor info, or the temperature info. But for the most part, if you want to enable the ITM, basically what you're going to have to do is you're going to select your ITM page that you want. For example, I usually like to have it on the traction control settings. If I'm an ACC or something like that, I'll have it on traction control and ABS settings. So that's my priority. And so you see here, if I set this as my favorite, no matter what adjustments I make in the car, if it goes to this page or to this page, it'll always default back to this page. So this would be my main ITM screen. So here, if you see these little icons on the side, these are the auto switch. So what happens here is if I have that selected and I go here, well, I want the lap and the position, it's going to always default to my page 3, but as soon as a lap change happens or as soon as a position change happens, it's going to go to this page and show me that, and then after a few seconds it's going to drop back. And now this is where you adjust how long you want that to show. So for example, if I'm on lap or position and I wanted to say 10 seconds, which is the default, it's going to show me that information for 10 seconds, and after 10 seconds is going to default back to this. If I look at legacy mode basically is just going to have the gear and the speed of what I'm seeing on the OLED, for example, in a Formula V2 wheel. Let me just go back to here. The information that I'm seeing on here is what this legacy mode is. That's what's going to show you there. All right. So again, fantastic tool. I mean, I absolutely love ITM. When you get comfortable with that, it's really a valuable tool. What I'm going to do really quickly, let's go back to the main menu. I'm going to switch out to my Podium button module endurance, and we'll see how the information changes. All right, so let's go over to the ITM page, and now you'll see I have two rows. One is for the Podium button module endurance, and the other is for the Podium wheelbase. So I can have a page selected here, and then on my Podium button module endurance, I can adjust to have one of these pages on at the same time. So on my DD wheel, I'm going to see my preferred page here, my preferred values, and you can see I have a profile loaded just to show you how I've customized this one. And so this is where it's really nice in the combination between the endurance module and the DD wheel. You can have a lot of information, a lot of details coming through. Now let's switch over to the LED page. And now you can see in the LED page, this is the same. The Rev LEDs are pretty much the same. And here you can see I have the Rev LED flash. So I can basically turn all these on and do the exact same thing. So these lights here are what you see through here. And then these flag LEDs, much like the Formula V2, are what you can adjust and what you can customize here. Now, some games will support it, some games won't support it, but for the most part, it's pretty similar between the Formula wheels and the button module endurance as far as, customizing your LEDs. You can go through and do the same by just holding here, and you can select the different light that you want. You can actually have, these two lights on the top different than this one. That's really where Fanalab shines, is I think between the LED and the ITM page and getting all that information, it really just enables a lot more from your hardware. Now, on the game profile page, what you're seeing here is an overview of all your settings. So from your game telemetry settings, the tuning menu, the LEDs and the ITM. So you're seeing everything basically here in one page kind of all together. So on the side here, this is where it's really important. Now, as you can see, I'm in Automobilista 2 here, and I have multiple profiles here for the cars and for vehicles that I like to drive. I have here for my different wheels. I have the Formula V2, the Porsche. I have a second one for the Porsche. You can create endless tuning menu options here, as many as you want. What you need to do is when you have any game that you have installed, for example, if I have Race Room installed, first thing I'm going to need to do is make sure I hit Enable Telemetry. And you'll see here, if there's something you have to do within the game or within the hardware or whatever it may be, it'll tell you here what you have to do. And I'll show you a game where it does tell you that. So make sure you click that. Make sure you enable this. So here, this is a perfect example. In Race Room, what you want to make sure you do is just in the assignments in Race Room, you're going to go to map a keyboard key for the Rev LED toggle and the Fanatec LED display. When you're in the game, in the pit or whatever, just cycle through them till it says off on your LED display and make sure it says none on the flags. This way, you're only getting the information being fed from Fanalab as opposed to Fanalab and Race Room. So this is a great example where you go through the games and you click these two to make sure it's on, and it'll tell you if you have to do anything. So let's see here, let's take, for example, iRacing. In iRacing, again, there's no setup needed. And then to the Rev LED hardware, we'll make sure external display is unchecked. Okay, so let's go to Kartcraft. So if I go into Kartcraft and I hit Enable Telemetry, here it's going to tell me exactly what I need to do in-game to get this to start communicating, which is just making sure the UDP output is set to port on and port is 5000. Now, if I go into enable the hardware, there's no setup needed. So every game is different and it'll just tell you what you need to do within the game. Now, let's go back here for a second. What has been added to this is the recommended force feedback settings. So what this is going to do, if you click this, it'll take you to the Fanatec website for this game, for these settings, recommended settings. You do have the Fanatec settings in here already. So it is loaded already. And if you want to just run the settings, it won't adjust anything else. It'll just basically run the settings for you. You can start there as a baseline and then start customizing your force feedback. As I said, Fanalab is such a great tool for anybody who's got, Fanatec gear, whether it's a CSL, a CSW, or a DD wheel, pedals. It really allows you a lot of customization and a lot of freedom to do what you want with, settings. So you can see here, I have settings for every car, not every car in the game, but ones that I run quite often. And, I'll just keep testing things out. So I have my Formula V2 initial version that I did, created a B version of it with just some LED changes. And then I tried another one with some changes on the force feedback settings and the dynamic force feedback and just finding what you like and just test everything out. And that's the great thing about it, is that you can create hundreds of profiles if you want. If you go to the website under the Fanalab category, so for example, if we go back to the main menu here and we click Fanalab, this will take us to the website. And once we people that, upload a lot of their profiles, and you can download them and install them and import them. So if you do download any profiles, just go in to click here, import, and select the file. It'll just load it up into the rest of the profiles that you have here. When you want to save, say for example, I really like my settings for that. I like my LEDs for that, but I want to create another profile that I can adjust settings, and I want to just change the settings on it. So I'll go to my tuning menu, I'll make my adjustments here, I'll just dial that down, do whatever I want, make all my adjustments there, go back to my game profile. I can just choose what I want to save. Say, for example, I don't want to save my dynamic force feedback because I want to make some changes to it. So I'm going to create another profile, say Formula V2B. I'm going to uncheck the dynamic force feedback, so it's not going to save that. I'm going to go back to my dynamic force feedback and make the changes that I want, go back and then save it. Or I could just make a completely new profile with the exact same settings, go make my changes in any of the menus, come back here and set it with a new name. And that's all I have to do just to create a new profile with the different settings. It's very straightforward. As I said at the beginning, there's information on every single menu that you're on. It tells you exactly what it needs to do. But again, I'm a very visual learner. I like to watch somebody doing something. I like to see somebody going through it. Please, if there's any questions you have about Fanalab, post them in the comments below and I'll answer them. And if you want to see something a little bit more in depth as far as setting, your ITM up or setting your LEDs up or your percentages, if you want to share some profiles below, I'm sure a lot of people starting out with this will really like that, especially with the Black Friday just passed. Everybody's getting their new gear and they want to get up and running and try some new things out. So I'm all about just helping the community, making everybody, get the best out of their equipment. And so I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, like I said, please post below and we'll catch you guys again really soon. Take care.